Dr. Marcus Chun adjusted his glasses and squinted at the ancient text displayed on his holographic screen. The research station orbiting Luna's dark side hummed quietly around him, a sanctuary of knowledge floating in the cold void of space. For 3 years, he had been the only human researcher stationed here, studying the linguistic patterns of extinct alien civilizations. Most people found his work boring, but Marcus loved the puzzle of dead languages. The station was small, just 6 rooms connected by narrow corridors. Marcus had his living quarters, a small kitchen, the main research lab where he spent most of his time, a communications room, a storage bay, and an observation deck. The AI systems handled life support and basic maintenance, leaving Marcus free to focus on his translations. Tonight felt different somehow. Marcus had been working on a particularly challenging text from the Zarathi civilization when the station's proximity alarms began to chirp softly. He looked up from his work, frowning. The alarms were set to detect any objects larger than a coffee cup within 1,000 kilometers. Out here in the empty space beyond Luna's orbit, such alerts were extremely rare. Marcus walked to the communications room and checked the sensor displays. A small object was approaching the station, moving slowly and erratically. The readings were strange. The object appeared to be organic, not mechanical. It was roughly the size of an escape pod, but the energy signatures were all wrong for human technology. As the object drew closer, Marcus activated the external cameras. What he saw made him gasp and nearly drop his coffee mug. It wasn't a pod at all. It was some kind of biological craft, pulsing with a dim blue light. The surface looked almost alive, like skin or bark. As he watched, the craft seemed to shudder and list to one side, clearly damaged. Marcus had spent his entire adult life studying alien cultures, but he had never encountered living aliens before. The Zarathi, Moldani, and other civilizations he researched had all been extinct for thousands of years. His heart raced as he realized he might be witnessing first contact with a living alien species. The craft continued to drift closer, its movement becoming more erratic. Marcus could see what looked like burn marks along its hull, and part of one side appeared to have been torn away. Whatever this thing was, it was in serious trouble. Marcus quickly ran to the observation deck, which had the best view of the approaching vessel. As he pressed his face to the reinforced window, he could see the craft more clearly. It definitely appeared to be some kind of escape pod or small transport, but unlike anything in human databases. The bioluminescent pulses were growing weaker, and Marcus realized the craft was probably dying. He had to make a decision quickly. His research station wasn't equipped for rescue operations, and he had no idea what kind of life support these aliens might need. But he couldn't just watch them die in a vacuum of space. Marcus had always believed that knowledge and compassion went hand in hand. If he could learn about these beings and help them survive, it would be the discovery of a lifetime. Marcus hurried back to the communications room and activated the station's small tractor beam. The beam was designed for collecting space debris and small asteroids for study, but it should be able to gently guide the alien craft into the station's docking bay. He had to be careful not to damage the vessel further. As the tractor beam locked onto the craft, Marcus held his breath. The bioluminescent pulses flickered more rapidly, almost as if the craft was responding to his presence. Slowly, carefully, he guided it into the docking bay and activated the atmospheric seals. The docking bay filled with breathable air, and Marcus put on his emergency suit before approaching the alien vessel. Up close, it was even more remarkable. The surface was indeed organic, with a texture like smooth bark. Intricate patterns covered the hull, and Marcus realized they might be some form of writing or decoration. As he circled the craft looking for an entrance, he heard something that made his blood run cold. From inside the vessel came a sound that was unmistakably crying. Not the mechanical distress call of the computer system, but the organic, emotional sobbing of living beings in pain and fear. Marcus found what appeared to be a sealed hatch on one side of the craft. The bioluminescent patterns around it were very dim, barely visible. He placed his gloved hand on the surface, and, to his amazement, the hatch began to iris open with a soft sighing sound. Inside the cramped vessel, Marcus discovered 6 small figures huddled together in the dim emergency lighting. They appeared to be children, though clearly not human. Each was about the size of a human 12-year-old, with fur-covered bodies and distinctly wolf-like features. Their ears were pointed and mobile, their snouts elongated, and their hands ended in small claws. But their eyes were large and intelligent, filled with terror and confusion. All 6 of the young aliens were female, Marcus realized, and they were injured. Some had burns on their arms and legs, others had cuts and bruises. Their clothing was torn and singed. When they saw Marcus, they pressed themselves against the far wall of their craft, whimpering in a language he didn't recognize. Marcus slowly removed his helmet, showing them his human face. He held up his hands to demonstrate he was unarmed and spoke in the calmest voice he could manage. "It's okay," he said softly. "I'm not going to hurt you. I want to help." The wolf-like children didn't understand his words, but something in his tone seemed to calm them slightly. The largest of the group, who appeared to be the oldest, said something in their musical, growling language. Marcus wished desperately that he had his translation equipment with him. He gestured to himself and said, "Marcus." Then he pointed to them and raised his eyebrows questioningly. The oldest girl seemed to understand. She pointed to herself and said something that sounded like Kira. She then pointed to each of her companions in turn, giving what Marcus assumed were their names. Marcus spent the next hour carefully coaxing the frightened children out of their damaged craft and into the station's main living area. They moved in a tight group, never leaving each other's sides. Marcus noticed they communicated with each other through a combination of their musical language, hand gestures, and subtle movements of their ears and tails. In the better lighting of the living area, Marcus could see their injuries more clearly. None appeared life-threatening, but they needed medical attention. The station's medical bay was designed for humans, but Marcus hoped he could adapt the equipment for their alien physiology. As he gathered medical supplies, Marcus tried to piece together what had happened to these children. Their craft had clearly been damaged in some kind of attack or accident. They were alone, frightened, and far from home. The question was, where was home? And how'd they ended up in the empty space near Luna? The oldest girl, Kira, seemed to be trying to communicate something important to Marcus. She kept pointing toward the observation windows and making urgent sounds. Marcus followed her to the observation deck, and she pressed her face to the window, looking out into space with obvious distress. Marcus activated the external sensors and began scanning the surrounding area. What he found made his heart sink. About 2,000 kilometers away, barely visible against the star field, were the remains of a much larger vessel. The debris field was extensive, and Marcus could see the characteristic energy signatures of weapon impacts on the larger pieces. Kira and her companions weren't just lost. They were survivors of what appeared to be a devastating attack. Marcus looked at the 6 frightened children and felt a surge of protective anger. Someone had attacked a vessel carrying these young beings, and they had barely escaped with their lives. As if reading his thoughts, Kira looked up at Marcus with her large, intelligent eyes and spoke a single word in her language. Even without translation, Marcus could hear the pain and loss in her voice. He realized she was probably saying mother or family. Marcus knelt down to Kira's level and gently placed his hand on her shoulder. She didn't pull away, which he took as a good sign. In his calmest voice, he said, "I'll take care of you. All of you. You're safe now." Over the next few days, Marcus worked tirelessly to make the wolf children comfortable and treat their injuries. He converted one of the storage rooms into a sleeping area with soft bedding and warm lighting. He experimented with the food synthesizers to create meals that their alien digestive systems could handle. The children were remarkably adaptive and intelligent. They quickly learned to operate the basic station controls and even began picking up simple English words. Marcus started teaching them his language while trying to learn theirs. He discovered their species was called the Lupari, and they came from a world in a star system about 40 light years from Earth. Kira told him, through a combination of broken English and gestures, that their transport had been carrying them and their families to a new colony world when they were attacked by raiders. The Lupri were apparently a peaceful species, with little in the way of military defenses. The attack had been swift and devastating. Marcus felt his protective instincts growing stronger each day. These weren't just alien specimens to be studied. They were children who had lost everything and needed someone to care for them. He found himself looking forward to their quiet conversations in the evening, their attempts to teach him Lupri games, and even their occasional mischief as they explored the station. But as the weeks passed, Marcus began to worry about the future. His research mission was scheduled to end in 6 months, and he would be returning to Earth. What would happen to Kira and the others? Human authorities would certainly want to study them, but Marcus feared they would be treated as curiosities rather than as the intelligent, emotional beings he had come to know. The children seemed to sense his growing unease. They had become remarkably good at reading human emotions, and Kira in particular seemed to understand that their current situation couldn't last forever. She asked him one evening, in her improving English, what would happen when the sky boat came to take him away. Marcus didn't have a good answer for her. He had sent carefully worded reports to Earth about his discovery, describing the children as refugees in need of assistance. But he knew the bureaucrats and scientists back home would see this as an unprecedented opportunity for study and research. The children's well-being might become secondary to their scientific value. That night, Marcus lay awake in his quarters, listening to the soft sounds of the children sleeping in the next room. Kira had nightmares sometimes, and the others would comfort her with gentle purring sounds. They had formed a close family unit, with the older children taking care of the younger ones. Marcus made a decision that surprised him. These children had already lost one family. He wouldn't let them lose another. Whatever it took, he would find a way to protect them and keep them together. He had spent his life studying extinct alien civilizations, learning about species that had vanished from the universe forever. He would not let that happen to the Lupri. The next morning, Marcus began making subtle changes to his reports to Earth. He emphasized the children's traumatic experiences and their need for stability. He described their intelligence and emotional depth, hoping to generate sympathy rather than just scientific interest. He also began discreetly researching legal precedents for alien refugees and the rights of non-human sentient beings. As he worked, Kira appeared at his elbow with a cup of the herbal tea she had taught him to make from synthesized Lupri plants. She had become remarkably skilled at operating the food systems, and she seemed to take pleasure in caring for Marcus the way he cared for all of them. "Thank you," Marcus said, accepting the tea gratefully. Kira smiled, showing her small fangs, and settled down beside his chair to watch him work. This had become their routine. She would sit with him while he did his research, occasionally asking questions about the symbols on his screen or pointing out interesting patterns in the alien text he was translating. Marcus realized that in caring for these children, he had found something he hadn't known he was missing. His quiet life of academic research had been fulfilling, but it had also been lonely. The children had brought warmth and purpose to his sterile research station. They had given him a family. But even as Marcus worked to secure their future, he couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. The attack on the Lupri transport had been deliberate and thorough. The raiders had clearly known what they were doing, and they had left no survivors except for 6 children in an escape pod. Marcus began to wonder if the attack had been random piracy or something more targeted. As he learned more about Lupri culture from the children, he discovered that their species had unusual abilities. They were remarkably empathic, able to sense the emotions and intentions of other beings. Some Lupri could even share thoughts and feelings across great distances. The children had demonstrated these abilities in small ways during their time on the station. They seemed to know when Marcus was feeling sad or stressed, and they would work together to cheer him up. They could communicate with each other without speaking, sharing complex ideas through what appeared to be telepathic contact. Marcus began to suspect that these abilities might have made the Lupri targets for slavers or others who would exploit their gifts. The thought filled him with anger and determination. These children were not tools to be used. They were individuals with their own hopes, fears, and dreams. As the weeks turned into months, Marcus continued to care for the Lupri children while working to secure their future. He had established contact with several human rights organizations and xenobiologists who specialized in first contact protocols. Slowly, he was building a support network that could help protect the children when they eventually had to leave the research station. But Marcus knew that the most important protection the children had was each other. They had formed an unbreakable bond, supporting and comforting each other through their shared trauma. Kira had emerged as their natural leader, but each child had their own role in the group. Some were natural caregivers, others were scouts and explorers, and the youngest provided joy and innocence that helped heal the emotional wounds of the older ones. Marcus documented everything carefully, not just for his scientific reports, but because he wanted the universe to understand what remarkable beings the Lupri children were. They were not just aliens to be studied. They were individuals with complex personalities, deep emotions, and an unshakable loyalty to their family group. As his time on the research station drew toward its end, Marcus felt a growing dread about the future. The children trusted him completely, and he felt responsible for their safety and happiness. He had promised to protect them, and he intended to keep that promise no matter what obstacles he faced. Little did Marcus know that far across the galaxy, another Lupri had survived the attack on the transport ship, and she was coming to find her missing children, bringing with her a fury that would shake the foundations of human space. 6 months had passed since Marcus first discovered the Lupri children drifting in space. The research station had become their home, and Marcus had become their guardian in every way that mattered. The children had grown stronger, both physically and emotionally, under his careful care. Kira, now fluent in English, had become Marcus's translator and liaison with her younger siblings. She helped him understand Lupri customs and needs, while also serving as a bridge between human and Lupri cultures. The other children had each found their own ways to contribute to their small family. Zura, the second oldest, had a gift for technology and had actually helped Marcus improve some of the station systems. The twins, Nala and Mira, were natural entertainers who kept everyone's spirits up with games and stories. Luna, despite being the youngest at what Marcus estimated was equivalent to 8 human years, had an incredible memory and could recite entire Lupri histories. And then there was Sage, who rarely spoke but seemed to understand emotions better than anyone else. Marcus had submitted his final reports to the Earth Colonial Administration, carefully crafting each document to emphasize the children's intelligence, their traumatic experiences, and their need for stability. He had built relationships with xenobiologists, child psychologists, and even legal advocates who specialize in interspecies rights. Everything was in place for the children's transition to life in human space. But Marcus still felt uneasy about leaving the station. The children trusted him completely, and he couldn't bear the thought of abandoning them to bureaucrats who might see them as specimens rather than individuals. He had requested permission to accompany the children to Earth and serve as their advocate during the integration process. The response from Earth had been mixed. The colonial administration was excited about the first contact with a living alien species, but they were also cautious about the precedent this might set. There were concerns about security, about the children's unusual empathic abilities, and about the legal implications of granting citizenship or refugee status to non-humans. Marcus tried to shield the children from these political complexities, but Kira was too smart to be fooled. She could sense his growing anxiety, and she had begun asking difficult questions about what would happen when they left the station. "Marcus," she said one evening as they sat in the observation deck watching the stars, "the other children are scared. They can feel your worry, even when you try to hide it. What are you not telling us?" Marcus looked at the young Lupari female, marveling at how much she had grown in the months since their first meeting. She was no longer the terrified child he had found in the escape pod. She had become a thoughtful, mature individual who cared deeply for her family and understood the complexities of their situation. "I'm trying to make sure you'll all be safe and happy when we leave here," Marcus said carefully. "Some of the people on Earth are excited to meet you, but others are worried about things they don't understand." "They're worried about us," Kira said. It wasn't a question. "Some of them, yes," Marcus admitted. "They don't know Lupari like I do. They don't understand that you're not dangerous, just different." Kira was quiet for a moment, her ears flicking in the way they did when she was thinking hard. "What if we don't go to Earth?" she asked finally. "What do you mean? What if we found somewhere else to live? Somewhere we could be together and not have to worry about people who are afraid of us?" Marcus felt his heart clench. The children had been through so much, and now they were faced with the uncertainty of an unknown future on an alien world among people who might not accept them. It wasn't fair. "I wish it were that simple," Marcus said. "But there aren't many places in human space where you could live independently. And you need protection, medical care, education. We have you," Kira said simply. The trust in her voice nearly broke Marcus's heart. These children had lost everything once already, and now they were facing the possibility of being separated from the only family they had left, including him. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Kira's question and the look of quiet desperation in her eyes. The children deserved better than to be political pawns in humanity's first contact procedures. They deserved to grow up safe, loved, and together. Marcus was still awake when the station's proximity alarms began to sound. But these weren't the soft chimes that had announced the children's arrival 6 months ago. These were loud, urgent warnings that indicated something large and potentially dangerous was approaching fast. Marcus rushed to the communications room and activated the external sensors. What he saw made his blood run cold. A massive ship was approaching the station, easily 10 times the size of any human vessel he had ever seen. The design was completely alien, all curves and organic surfaces that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. The ship was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. It moved through space with an elegance that no human ship could match, but it bristled with what were clearly weapon systems. Energy readings from the vessel were off the charts, indicating technology far beyond anything humans had developed. As Marcus watched, frozen with fear, the alien ship came to a stop less than a kilometer from a station. It hung there in space like a predator studying its prey, and Marcus could feel an almost physical pressure emanating from it. The children had woken when the alarm started, and they clustered in the doorway of the communications room, still in their sleeping clothes. Marcus turned to reassure them, but stopped when he saw their faces. They weren't looking at him. They were staring at the displays showing the alien ship. "Ka," Marcus said uncertainly, but it was little Luna who spoke first, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mama," she said. The word hit Marcus like a physical blow. He looked back at the massive ship on his displays, understanding flooding through him. This wasn't a random encounter. Someone had come looking for the children. Kira stepped forward, her face a mixture of joy and terror. "It's a Lupari ship," she said, her voice shaking. "But it's a warship. Our people don't build ships like that." Before Marcus could respond, the station's communication system crackled to life. A voice spoke in the musical Lupari language, but there was nothing gentle or melodic about the tone. It was harsh, commanding, and filled with barely controlled rage. Kira translated in real time, her voice growing smaller with each word. She says she knows her children are here. She says the humans will pay for what they've done. She's giving us one chance to send the cubs out in an escape pod before she destroys the station. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. This wasn't a rescue. It was an attack waiting to happen. Someone out there believed that humans had taken the children, and they were prepared to use violence to get them back. "Can you answer her?" Marcus asked Kira. "Can you tell her what really happened?" Kira nodded and spoke into the communication system in rapid Loopery. Her voice was respectful, but urgent, and Marcus could hear her using the childhood terms of address that indicated she was speaking to a parent figure. The response was immediate and explosive. The voice on the other end erupted in what sounded like a combination of disbelief, rage, and grief. Marcus didn't need a translation to understand the emotional content. "She doesn't believe me," Kira said, tears starting to flow down her furry cheeks. "She thinks I'm being forced to say these things. She says humans are known as slavers and child stealers. She says she's going to take us home and make the humans pay for their crimes." Marcus's mind raced. He had to find a way to defuse this situation before someone got hurt. The alien ship clearly had enough firepower to destroy his station 100 times over, but he couldn't let these children be taken by someone who was clearly not thinking rationally. "Ask her to come aboard," Marcus said. "Tell her she can see for herself that you're all safe and unharmed." Kira spoke again, her voice pleading. The response was shorter this time, but no less angry. "She says she won't set foot on a human ship. She says to send us out in an escape pod, and she'll consider not destroying the station." Marcus looked at the 6 frightened children clustered around him. They were caught between 2 impossible choices: stay with the human who had cared for them for months, or go with their own species who might not understand what had really happened. "What do you want to do?" Marcus asked them. It was Sage who answered, surprising everyone. The quiet child rarely spoke, but when she did, the others always listened. "She's not thinking clearly," Sage said in her soft voice. "Her emotions are broken. Pain and anger and grief all mixed together. She can't hear past her own hurt." Kira nodded slowly. "Sage is right. But she's family. If we don't go with her, she might do something terrible." Marcus understood. The children were protecting him, just as he had protected them. They were willing to sacrifice their own safety to prevent violence. "There has to be another way," Marcus said. He thought quickly, then had an idea. "Kira, ask her about the attack on your transport. Ask her what she knows about it." Kira looked puzzled, but spoke into the communicator. The response was immediate and filled with pain. "She says pirates attacked the transport convoy. She was on another ship. She got separated during the fight. When she came back, the transport was destroyed and we were gone. She's been hunting the pirates for months, following every lead. And she thinks humans were involved." Another exchange, this one longer. Kira's expression grew more and more troubled as she listened. "She says the pirates had human technology, human weapons. She says there are rumors that humans buy Loopery children because of our empathic abilities, that we're valuable as tools." Marcus felt sick. He was beginning to understand why the Loopery adult was so hostile toward humans. From her perspective, her children had been kidnapped by slave traders and were now being held by their accomplices. "Tell her I'm going to show her something," Marcus said. "Tell her to watch the external cameras." Marcus quickly brought up the recording he had made of the children's escape pod when it first arrived at the station. The footage clearly showed the damaged craft drifting in space, the children's injuries, and Marcus's careful rescue efforts. He had the station broadcast the images to the alien ship. The communication channel was quiet for a long time. When the voice came back, it was different, still angry, but with an undertone of confusion and uncertainty. She wants to know why you helped us," Kira translated. "She says humans don't help aliens without wanting something in return." Marcus thought about his answer carefully. These next words might determine whether the situation escalated into violence or could be resolved peacefully. "Tell her," Marcus said slowly, "that I helped you because you were children in need. Tell her that in all my months of studying dead alien civilizations, I had never met living aliens before. Tell her that you taught me that knowledge without compassion is worthless." Kira translated, her voice gaining strength as she spoke. The response was quieter this time, more thoughtful. She says she wants to speak to you directly. She's learned some human languages during her hunt for the pirates. The communication system crackled, and then a new voice came through, deeper, more mature than Kira's, but clearly Loopery. The English was heavily accented, but understandable. Human, the voice said. You claim you saved my cubs. Why should I believe you? Marcus took a deep breath. Because they're standing right here, healthy and happy and free to make their own choices. If I had wanted to harm them or use them, I've had 6 months to do it. Instead, I've been trying to find them a safe place to live and grow up. You have kept them prisoner on your ship. No, Marcus said firmly. I've given them a home while they heal from their trauma. They're free to leave any time they want. In fact, I've been preparing to take them to Earth so they can have better lives than I can provide on this research station. There was a long pause. Then, the voice said, Let me speak to Kira. Marcus nodded to Kira, who stepped closer to the communicator. She spoke in Lupari for several minutes, her voice earnest and urgent. The adult responded with shorter phrases, clearly asking questions. The conversation continued for almost an hour. Finally, Kira stepped back and looked at Marcus with tears in her eyes. She wants us to come with her, Kira said. She says she can take us to a safe place where Lupari children can grow up properly. Marcus felt his heart breaking, but he nodded. That's probably what's best for you. You belong with your own people. But Kira was shaking her head. She says you can come too. She says she owes you a debt for caring for us. She wants to meet the human who treated Lupari children as if they were his own. Marcus was stunned. This was not the outcome he had expected. But before he could respond, the younger children clustered around him, all talking at once. We don't want to leave you, Luna said. You're our family too now, added Zara. Please come with us, Marcus, Nala, and Mira said together. Marcus looked at their hopeful faces and felt overwhelmed. These children had changed his life in ways he was still discovering. The thought of being separated from them was almost unbearable. I don't know if that's possible, Marcus said carefully. I'm human. I need different food, different air, different gravity. Lupari ships can accommodate many species, came the voice from the communicator. If you're willing to leave your human space behind, you would be welcome among us. My cubs speak of you as a father. That makes you family. Marcus stared at the communication panel, hardly believing what he was hearing. A few hours ago, he had been preparing to defend the children from an alien attack. Now he was being invited to join an alien family among the stars. I need to think about this, Marcus said. Of course, the voice replied. But decide quickly. There are human ships approaching. I detected them on long-range sensors. We must leave soon if we wish to avoid complications. Marcus's blood went cold. Earth Command must have decided to intervene after receiving his reports about the alien contact. They probably had ships en route to secure the alien specimens and take them back to Earth for study. The choice was suddenly clear. Marcus could stay behind and face questioning about his unauthorized alien contact, while the children disappeared into the bureaucratic maze of Earth's xenobiology departments. Or he could take a leap of faith into the unknown and trust the alien woman who had come to rescue her cubs. Marcus looked at the 6 young faces watching him with desperate hope. They had already lost one family. They didn't deserve to lose another. I'll come with you, Marcus said. The children erupted in cheers and happy tears. Even through the communicator, Marcus could hear the relief in the adult Lupari's voice. Gather what you need quickly, she said. We leave in 1 hour. And human, Marcus, thank you for bringing my children home to me. As Marcus rushed to pack his essential research and personal items, he realized he was about to embark on the greatest adventure of his life. He was leaving behind everything he had ever known to join an alien family among the stars. But as he watched the children excitedly preparing for their departure, chattering about showing him their homeworld and teaching him more about Lupari culture, Marcus knew he was making the right choice. Sometimes the greatest discoveries weren't found in ancient texts or dead civilizations. Sometimes they were found in the love and trust of a family that chose to include you, no matter how different you might be. Marcus had never experienced anything like boarding the Lupari ship. The vessel that had seemed so threatening from a distance revealed itself to be a masterpiece of organic engineering. The corridors curved and flowed like the inside of a massive tree, with walls that pulsed gently with bioluminescent light. The air was warm and humid, filled with scents that reminded Marcus of forest floors and blooming flowers. The woman who greeted them was clearly Kira's mother, though she was larger and more imposing than Marcus had expected. Vera, as she introduced herself, stood nearly 7 feet tall, with silver-streaked fur and eyes that held depths of experience and pain. Her clothes were practical but elegant, designed for both ceremony and combat. When she looked at Marcus, her expression was complex, gratitude mixed with wariness, respect tempered by uncertainty. "So you are the human who saved my cubs," Vera said in her accented English. Her voice carried authority that made Marcus understand why she commanded such a powerful ship. "I did what anyone should do," Marcus replied. "They needed help." Vera's ears flicked forward in what Marcus was learning to recognize as surprise. "You are either very naive or very wise," she said. Most species would have seen opportunity, not obligation. The children had clustered around both adults, bridging the gap between them with their obvious affection for each. Marcus could see the family resemblance now. Kira had her mother's intelligent eyes, Luna had her graceful movements, and all of them shared the same expressive ears that revealed their emotions. As Vera led them through the ship, Marcus was amazed by what he saw. The vessel was enormous, with multiple levels connected by ramps and curved walkways. Gardens flourished in dedicated biodomes, providing fresh air and food for the crew. Living quarters were carved into the organic walls like bird nests, each one unique and comfortable. The technology was seamlessly integrated into the biological structure, creating a harmony between nature and engineering that human ships had never achieved. "How many people live here?" Marcus asked as they walked. "This ship carries 300 souls," Vera replied. "Mostly Lupari, but we have taken in refugees from other species over the years. The galaxy is not always a safe place for those who cannot defend themselves." Marcus began to understand that this wasn't just a warship. It was a mobile community, a home for those who had nowhere else to go. The crew they passed included not only Lupari, but also several other species Marcus didn't recognize. All of them seemed to know Vera and treat her with deep respect. The children were excited to show Marcus their new home, pointing out the features that differed from his research station. They introduced him to other young Lupari, who welcomed him with the easy acceptance of children everywhere. Marcus found himself thinking that this might actually work, that he might be able to build a life here among these people. But as the days passed and they traveled deeper into Lupari space, Marcus began to sense undercurrents of tension that the children either didn't notice or chose to ignore. Not everyone on the ship was comfortable with having a human aboard. Some of the crew members watched him with suspicion, and conversations would stop when he entered a room. Vera noticed his discomfort and spoke to him privately one evening as they stood in the ship's main observation deck, watching the stars stream past. "My people have good reasons to be wary of humans," she said without preamble. "The pirates who attacked the transport convoy were human-equipped. We have encountered human slavers before. Your species has a reputation in this part of the galaxy." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. "What kind of reputation?" "Aggressive expansion, exploitation of weaker species, use of overwhelming force to achieve political goals," Vera listed. "There are human colonies that use alien labor under conditions that approach slavery. There are human merchants who trade in sentient beings. Not all humans, perhaps, but enough to make us cautious." "I had no idea," Marcus said, feeling sick. "The government reports I received never mentioned anything like that." "Governments rarely advertise their failures," Vera said dryly. "But the galaxy knows. Word travels quickly among the species that humans consider primitive or underdeveloped." Marcus was quiet for a long time, processing this information. He had always thought of humanity's expansion into space as a positive thing, bringing knowledge and civilization to new worlds. The idea that other species saw humans as conquerors and exploiters was deeply disturbing. "Why did you invite me to come with you?" Marcus asked finally. "If your people have such negative experiences with humans?" Vera's expression softened slightly. Because you proved that not all humans are the same. Because my children love you, and they are excellent judges of character. And because I believe that change begins with individual choices. If I reject you because of what other humans have done, I become the same as those who would reject my children because they are different. Her words reminded Marcus why he had been so drawn to studying alien civilizations in the first place. Each species had its own unique perspective on existence, and the diversity of thought and culture in the galaxy was one of its greatest treasures. But apparently, not everyone shared that view. Over the following weeks, Marcus threw himself into learning about Lupari culture and society. The ship's archives contained thousands of years of history, art, literature, and scientific knowledge. He was fascinated to discover that the Lupari were naturally empathic not just with their own species, but with all sentient life. This ability made them exceptional diplomats and peacekeepers, but it also made them vulnerable to species that would exploit their compassionate nature. The children helped him learn the Lupari language properly, and in return, he taught them more advanced human concepts in science and mathematics. He was amazed by their capacity for learning and their natural curiosity about the universe. They absorbed knowledge like sponges and asked questions that challenged his own understanding of complex topics. Kira, in particular, showed remarkable aptitude for the translation work that had been Marcus's specialty. She could intuitively grasp the meaning behind linguistic patterns and help bridge communication gaps between species. Marcus found himself wondering if she might someday become a diplomat or ambassador, using her skills to build understanding between different civilizations. But their peaceful journey couldn't last forever. 3 weeks after leaving the research station, Vera called Marcus to the bridge with an expression of grim concern. "We have a problem," she said, gesturing to the main display screen. "Long-range sensors are detecting a human fleet on an intercept course. Military vessels, heavily armed." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "They're coming for me? Possibly. Or they may be responding to reports of an alien vessel in human space. Either way, they outnumber us and outgun us. We need to reach Lupari territory before they catch up. How long do we have? Perhaps 6 hours at current speed. But if we push the engines, we might make it to the border in 4. Marcus could see the tension in Vera's posture and hear it in her voice. She was trying to stay calm for the sake of her crew and the children, but she was clearly worried about the outcome of a potential confrontation. "What can I do to help?" Marcus asked. Vera looked at him with surprise. "You would stand with us against your own species?" "These children are my family now," Marcus said firmly. "And this ship is my home. I won't let anyone threaten either of them." Over the next few hours, Marcus watched the crew prepare for a possible battle. The ship's organic systems shifted and reconfigured, weapons pods emerging from hidden compartments, shield generators powering up with a low harmonic hum. The peaceful community vessel transformed into something formidable and dangerous. The children had been moved to the ship's protected core, but Kira insisted on staying near the bridge to help with communications. She had become an unofficial liaison between the human and Lupari perspectives on the situation. "The human ships are trying to contact us," reported the communications officer. "They're demanding we stop for inspection and surrender any human nationals aboard." Vera looked at Marcus. "They definitely know you're here. Someone must have tracked the station's transmissions." Marcus felt guilty that his presence was putting everyone at risk. "Maybe I should talk to them. Try to explain what really happened." "No," Vera said firmly. "We've seen how human authorities deal with alien contact. They would take you for debriefing and study the children as specimens. That is not acceptable." As they raced toward the border of Lupari space, Marcus watched the human fleet gaining slowly but steadily. The ships were sleek and efficient, built for speed and firepower rather than the organic harmony of the Lupari vessel. From his new perspective, they looked aggressive and threatening rather than protective. 4 human destroyers and a carrier, reported the tactical officer. "They're launching fighters." Marcus could see the small attack craft on the display screen, moving much faster than the larger ships. At their current rate of approach, they would reach the Lupri vessel well before it crossed into safe territory. Can we fight them? Marcus asked. We could, Vera said grimly. But it would mean war between our species. The Lupri Council has worked for centuries to maintain peaceful relations with all our neighbors. I will not be the one to destroy that legacy. Marcus understood her dilemma. As a ship captain, she had the firepower to defend herself and her crew. But as a leader of her people, she had to consider the larger consequences of her actions. A battle here could lead to open conflict between humans and Lupri, with devastating consequences for both species. There has to be another way, Marcus said, his mind racing. He thought about everything he had learned about both species over the past months. Humans valued strength and determination, while Lupri prized empathy and understanding. Somehow, he had to find a solution that appealed to both. What if we don't run? Marcus said suddenly. Vera stared at him. What? What if we stop running and face them directly? Not to fight, but to communicate. Let me talk to them, but do it openly with you standing beside me. Show them that this isn't a kidnapping or a hostile action. It's two species trying to build a relationship based on mutual respect. That's incredibly risky, Vera said. If they attack, then you defend yourselves, Marcus said. But give diplomacy a chance first. That's what the Lupri do best, isn't it? And maybe it's time for humans to learn a better way too. Vera was quiet for a moment, considering. Around the bridge, the crew waited for her decision. Finally, she nodded. All stop, she ordered. Power down weapons and open a communication channel to the human fleet. As the Lupri ship came to a halt in space, Marcus felt his heart pounding. The next few minutes would determine not just his own fate, but potentially the future relationship between two intelligent species. The main screen lit up with the image of a human naval officer, a stern-faced woman with graying hair, and the insignia of a fleet admiral. Her expression was cold and professional as she spoke. Unidentified alien vessel. This is Admiral Rebecca Stone of the Earth Colonial Fleet. You are harboring a human citizen who has violated first contact protocols and may be operating under alien influence. Surrender Dr. Marcus Chun immediately for debriefing and medical examination. Marcus stepped forward, moving to stand beside Vera, where the camera could see them both. Admiral Stone, I'm Dr. Marcus Chun. I'm not being held prisoner, and I'm not under any kind of alien influence. I made a free choice to join this family and help these children find a safe place to live. The Admiral's expression didn't change. Dr. Chun, you have been reported as missing and potentially compromised. You will return with us for proper evaluation. The alien subjects will be transferred to appropriate research facilities for study and containment. Marcus felt anger flare in his chest. These aren't subjects, they're children. They're intelligent, emotional beings who have already suffered enough trauma. I won't let you treat them like laboratory specimens. Dr. Chun, you're clearly not thinking rationally. Report to the transport immediately, or we will board the alien vessel and retrieve you by force. Before Marcus could respond, Vera stepped closer to the camera. When she spoke, her voice carried the full authority of her position and the dignity of her species. Admiral Stone, I am Commander Vera Nightwind of the Lupri Defense Corps. Dr. Chun is under my protection as a valued member of my family and crew. These children are my adopted cubs, survivors of a pirate attack that your intelligence services should investigate rather than ignore. If you attempt to board this vessel or threaten any of my people, you will be committing an act of war against the Lupri Federation. The Admiral's eyes widened slightly at the mention of the Lupri Federation. Marcus realized that Vera's people were apparently more powerful and organized than he had understood. Commander Nightwind, the Admiral said carefully, we have no quarrel with your people. But Dr. Chun is a human citizen, and the children are potential security risks. We cannot allow aliens with unknown capabilities to roam freely in human space. Then, it is fortunate that we are leaving human space, Vera replied calmly. Dr. Chun has requested asylum among our people, and we have granted it. The children will be raised in safety among their own kind. Your concerns are no longer relevant. Marcus watched the standoff with growing tension. Both women were strong leaders protecting their own people, but their worldviews were so different that communication seemed almost impossible. Then, Kira stepped into view of the camera, moving between Marcus and Vera with the confident grace of a young diplomat. "Admiral Stone," she said in her carefully practiced English, "my name is Kira. I am one of the children you call security risks. I would like to ask you a question." The Admiral looked surprised by the young Lupari's composure and articulate speech. "What question?" "If human children were orphaned and alone in space, and an alien found them and cared for them and loved them, would you want that alien to give them back to people who saw them only as problems to be solved? Or would you want them to stay with someone who treated them as family?" The simple honesty of the question hung in the space between the two ships. Marcus could see the Admiral struggling with her response, perhaps recognizing for the first time that these weren't just alien specimens, but real individuals with their own thoughts and feelings. "That's different," the Admiral said finally. "These are alien children with unknown abilities. They could be dangerous. I can sense emotions," Kira said matter-of-factly. "So can my sisters. We can tell when someone is angry or sad or afraid. We use this ability to help others feel better and to avoid conflicts. Is this dangerous to you?" Marcus held his breath as he watched the Admiral's face. For the first time, her stern expression showed a crack of uncertainty. "Your abilities could be used for manipulation or espionage," the Admiral said, but with less conviction than before. "They could be," Kira agreed, "just as human weapons could be used for murder instead of protection. But we choose not to use our gifts to harm others, just as most humans choose not to use their strength to hurt the weak. We are not what we could be. We are what we choose to be." The wisdom in those words, coming from someone who appeared to be barely 13 years old, seemed to have an impact on the human officer. Marcus could see her reassessing everything she thought she knew about the situation. Vera chose that moment to speak again, her voice gentler but still firm. "Admiral Stone, I understand your concerns about security and unknown factors, but these children have been through enough fear and uncertainty. Dr. Chun has given them stability and love during their healing process. I ask you, as one parent to another, to let them continue their journey to safety without further trauma." The communication channel was quiet for a long moment. Marcus could almost see the Admiral weighing her duty against her conscience, her fears against her compassion. Finally, she spoke. "Dr. Chun, if you choose to stay with these people, you will be giving up your human citizenship. You will have no protection from Earth forces and no right to return to human space. Do you understand this?" Marcus looked at the 6 young faces watching him with hope and trust, at Vera, who had welcomed him into her family despite every reason to distrust humans, and at the ship that had become his home. The choice was easier than he had expected. "I understand, Admiral, and I accept those terms." The Admiral nodded slowly. "Then go in peace, Dr. Chun, and may you find what you're looking for among the stars." The communication channel closed, and Marcus watched as the human fleet slowly changed course and moved away. They had avoided a battle, but more importantly, they had shown that understanding was possible between species that seemed completely different. As the Lupari ship resumed its journey toward home, Marcus realized that his life had changed in ways he was only beginning to understand. He was no longer Dr. Marcus Chun, human researcher. He was Marcus Nightwind, adopted father and family member of an alien species that valued compassion above conquest. And for the first time in his life, he felt like he truly belonged. The Lupari homeworld was unlike anything Marcus had ever imagined. As their ship descended through the atmosphere, he pressed his face to the viewport in wonder. Vast forests stretched across continents, their canopies shimmering with bioluminescent threads that created patterns visible from orbit. Cities grew from the landscape like enormous trees, their organic towers spiraling into the sky, without disrupting the natural harmony of the world. "Welcome to Ethros," Vera said, standing beside Marcus as they watched their new home grow larger below them. "The eternal forest, our people call it. Every tree here has been growing for at least 1,000 years. Every city was planned to work with nature, not against it." The children pressed against the windows on all sides, pointing out landmarks and sharing memories with obvious joy. For them, this was a homecoming after months of uncertainty and fear. For Marcus, it was the beginning of an entirely new life. The ship landed in a natural clearing that had been adapted as a spaceport, with landing platforms that seemed to grow directly from the forest floor. As they disembarked, Marcus was struck by the scents and sounds of the alien world, the rich, earthy smell of the forest, the musical calls of creatures he couldn't identify, the whisper of wind through leaves that chimed like tiny bells. Hundreds of Lupari had gathered to welcome Vera and her crew home, but Marcus could feel their curious stares focused on him. He was clearly the first human many of them had ever seen, and their reactions ranged from fascination to wariness. The children stayed close to him, their presence a clear signal that he was under their protection. An elderly Lupari approached their group, his silver fur and wise eyes marking him as someone of importance. We spoke to Vera in their musical language. Marcus could hear respect and affection in his tone. "Marcus," Vera said, switching to English, "this is my father, Elder Thane Nightwind. He leads our family clan and sits on the planetary council." The elder studied Marcus with intelligent eyes before speaking in careful English. "So you are the human who saved my granddaughters. Vera has told me much about you." Marcus felt nervous under the scrutiny of someone who was clearly a powerful figure in Lupari society. "I did what anyone should do, Elder Thane. The children needed help." "Perhaps," the elder said thoughtfully, "but few would have given up their entire life to ensure their continued safety. Such devotion speaks well of your character." Over the following days, Marcus was introduced to a society unlike anything he had ever experienced. The Lupari lived in harmony with their environment, their technology seamlessly integrated with biological systems. Their cities were vertical forests, with homes and workplaces built into massive trees that had been gently shaped over centuries of growth. The children settled back into Lupari life with the resilience of youth, but they insisted on including Marcus in every aspect of their daily routine. They showed him how to navigate the tree cities, introduced him to their friends and extended family, and helped him learn the customs and courtesies that governed Lupari's social interaction. Marcus was amazed by the complexity and sophistication of their society. The Lupari had achieved a level of technological advancement that rivaled or exceeded human capabilities, but they had done so without the environmental destruction that marked humanity's progress. Their scientists worked with living systems rather than against them, creating technologies that grew rather than being manufactured. But perhaps most impressive was their approach to education and child-rearing. Lupari children were raised by the entire community, with every adult taking responsibility for their well-being and development. The 6 orphan sisters were immediately embraced by dozens of surrogate aunts and uncles, cousins, and grandparents, all eager to help them heal from their traumatic experiences. Marcus found his own role in this extended family somewhat uncertain. He was clearly important to the children, but he wasn't sure how he fit into the larger social structure. Lupari families were traditionally matriarchal, with mothers leading household decisions and fathers providing support and protection. But Marcus was neither Lupari nor biologically related to the children. Vera helped him understand his position during one of their evening conversations on the balcony of her family's tree home. The view from their dwelling showed the forest canopy stretching to the horizon, dotted with the soft lights of other family compounds. "You are concerned about your place here," she observed, reading his emotions with the empathic sensitivity common to her people. "I don't want to overstep boundaries," Marcus admitted. "The children mean everything to me, but I know I'm an outsider in your culture." "You are not an outsider," Vera said firmly. "When you chose to care for my cubs as if they were your own, you became family." When you gave up your human life to stay with us, you proved your commitment. The children have 6 mothers now. Their birth mother who died in the attack, me as their adoptive mother, and the 4 elder aunts who help raise all our clan's children. But they have only one father. The weight of that responsibility was both humbling and terrifying to Marcus. He had never expected to become a parent, especially not to 6 alien children who had already endured so much loss. But as the weeks passed, he found himself growing into the role with surprising ease. The children helped, of course. They were remarkably patient with his mistakes and enthusiastic about teaching him their ways. Kira had appointed herself as his cultural guide, explaining the subtle meanings behind Lupari social interactions. Zara helped him understand their technology, showing him how to interface with the biological systems that controlled everything from lighting to transportation. The twins introduced him to Lupari games and sports, most of which involve complicated team cooperation and empathic communication. Luna shared her vast knowledge of family history and clan traditions, and Sage, in her quiet way, helped him understand the emotional currents that flowed through Lupari society. But Marcus's most challenging adjustment came when he began to work with other Lupari adults. His background in xenolinguistics and cultural analysis made him valuable as a translator and cultural liaison, but his human perspective often clashed with Lupari sensibilities. The crisis came when Marcus was asked to join a delegation meeting with representatives from a species called the Vectari. These beings had recently made contact with the Lupari and were seeking to establish trade relationships. But the preliminary meetings had not gone well, with both sides struggling to understand each other's communication styles. Marcus studied the available information about the Vectari and quickly identified the problem. They were a highly logical, emotionally restrained species that communicated primarily through complex mathematical concepts embedded in their language. The Lupari, with their empathic nature and emotional openness, found this approach cold and alienating. They don't trust us because they can't understand our motives, Marcus explained to the Lupari delegation. Their society is based on logical contracts and measurable exchanges. When you approach them with offers of friendship and cooperation, they assume you're hiding a real agenda. Elder Thane frowned at this assessment. But we have no hidden agenda. We simply wish to establish peaceful relations with all sentient species. I know that, Marcus said, but they don't. In their experience, emotional appeals are usually manipulation tactics used to gain advantage in negotiations. The lead Lupari diplomat, an elegant female named Counselor Mira, looked frustrated. How can we build trust with beings who reject the very foundations of honest communication? Marcus thought carefully about his answer. This was exactly the kind of cultural bridge building that his human perspective might help with. You have to speak their language, literally and figuratively, he said. Instead of offering friendship, offer specific, measurable benefits. Instead of appealing to their emotions, appeal to their logic. Show them exactly what each side gains from cooperation, with precise calculations and clear boundaries. The Lupari delegation looked skeptical, but they agreed to try Marcus's approach. The next meeting with the Vectari was conducted very differently, with Marcus serving as translator not just of words but of entire conceptual frameworks. Instead of warm greetings and offers of friendship, the Lupari presented detailed analyses of trade potentials, resource exchanges, and mutual defense calculations. They offered specific contracts with clearly defined terms and measurable outcomes. They avoided any language that could be interpreted as emotional manipulation. The transformation in the Vectari representatives was immediate and dramatic. Where before they had been suspicious and withdrawn, they now became engaged and enthusiastic. They responded with their own detailed proposals and mathematical models. And by the end of the meeting, both sides had laid the groundwork for a productive relationship. After the Vectari delegation departed, Counselor Mira approached Marcus with an expression of amazement. I have never seen such a rapid shift in negotiations, she said. How did you know what would work? Because I've been on both sides, Marcus explained. Humans are somewhere between Lupari and Vectari in our communication styles. We use both emotional appeals and logical arguments, depending on the situation. That gives me a perspective that neither species has on its own. Word of Marcus's success spread quickly through Lupari diplomatic circles. Soon he was being consulted on communications with dozens of different species, each with their own unique cultural patterns and social structures. He found himself becoming an unofficial ambassador for the concept of interspecies understanding. But his most important work remained with the 6 children who had changed his life. As they grew and healed under the care of their extended Lupari family, Marcus watched them develop into remarkable individuals. Kira's diplomatic skills were already being recognized by the clan elders, who spoke of training her for the Planetary Council. Zara's technical innovations were attracting attention from the Lupari scientific community. The twins had joined a performance troupe that used empathic harmony to create stunning artistic displays. Luna was apprenticing with the clan's historians, helping to preserve ancient knowledge. And Sage was studying with the healers, learning to use her emotional sensitivity to help others overcome trauma. Each of them carried scars from their early loss, but they had transformed that pain into strength and compassion. They reached out to other refugee children who arrived on Ethros, offering comfort and understanding to those who had experienced similar tragedies. Marcus was proud of who they were becoming, but he also worried about their future. The galaxy was not always a safe place, and the children's unique combination of Lupari empathy and survival instincts made them potentially valuable to those who would exploit their abilities. His concerns proved justified when reports began arriving of increased pirate activity in the outer sectors. Ships were disappearing, colonies were being raided, and refugees were pouring into Lupari space with stories of organized attacks on peaceful settlements. The pattern was disturbing and familiar. Someone was conducting systematic raids designed to capture specific types of sentient beings, empaths, telepaths, and others with unusual mental abilities. The children's survival of the original attack on their transport was beginning to look less like luck and more like the failure of a carefully planned operation. Vera shared Marcus's growing concern. During one of their evening walks through the bioluminescent gardens surrounding their tree home, she voiced what they were both thinking. Someone is building an army, she said quietly, or a workforce. These aren't random pirate attacks, they're recruitment drives. Marcus nodded grimly, and they're specifically targeting species with empathic abilities. The question is why. Mental influence, Vera said. Imagine the advantages a military force would have if they could read their enemy's emotions, predict their reactions, manipulate their feelings. The implications were terrifying. If someone was collecting empathic beings to use as weapons or tools, then the children would always be targets. Their rescue and survival had been a temporary reprieve, not a permanent solution. But Marcus had learned something important during his months among the Lupari. Sometimes the greatest strength came not from fighting your enemies, but from building alliances with those who shared your values. The galaxy was full of species that valued peace over conquest, cooperation over domination. We need to warn the others, Marcus said. All the species that might be targeted. And we need to work together to stop whoever is behind these attacks. Vera smiled, her expression mixing pride and affection. You sound like a true Lupari diplomat now. Yes, we will build a coalition. And we will make sure that no more children suffer as ours did. As they walked back toward their home, Marcus could see the children through the windows, gathered around a glowing display as Kira taught the others about galactic geography. They were safe for now, surrounded by family and community. But Marcus knew that their greatest challenges still lay ahead. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, filled with those who saw compassion as weakness and diversity as a threat. But it was also filled with wonders and possibilities, with species reaching toward each other across the void, seeking connection and understanding. Marcus had found his place in that cosmic dance of civilizations. He was no longer just a human studying alien cultures. He was a bridge between species, a translator of more than just languages. He was a father to 6 remarkable children who were growing up to be leaders and healers and dreamers. And he was ready to help them face whatever challenges the future might bring, knowing that love and understanding could triumph over fear and hatred, one relationship at a time. 2 years had passed since Marcus first arrived on Ethros, and the peaceful forest world had become more than just his home. It had become the center of a growing network of allied species working together to combat the pirate threat that plagued the outer sectors of the galaxy. The coalition had grown from a handful of concerned diplomats to a formal alliance of over 30 species, each contributing their unique strengths to the common defense. The Lupari provided empathic intelligence and healing technologies. The Vectari offered advanced computational analysis and strategic planning. The crystalline Shay contributed quantum communication systems that couldn't be intercepted. Dozens of other species added their own capabilities to the mix. Marcus had found his calling as the Alliance's chief cultural liaison, helping to bridge the communication gaps that might otherwise have prevented cooperation. His human perspective, combined with his deep understanding of Lupari empathy, made him uniquely qualified to translate not just languages but entire worldviews between species that had evolved on completely different paths. But despite the coalition's successes in protecting merchant convoys and establishing safe havens for refugees, the source of the pirate attacks remained a mystery. The raiders struck with advanced technology and precise intelligence, always seeming to know exactly which ships carried valuable empathic individuals. They left few survivors and even fewer clues. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Luna, now 15 and serving as an apprentice historian, had been researching the attack that destroyed her family's transport. Her exceptional memory and attention to detail had led her to notice patterns in the historical records that the adults had missed. "The attacks aren't random," she announced at a family dinner, spreading holographic data across the table with the confidence of someone who had spent months verifying her conclusions. "They're following the old trade routes from the Kintari Empire." Marcus looked up from his meal, intrigued. The Kintari had been one of the civilizations he had studied during his years as a xenolinguist, a militaristic empire that had dominated this region of space over 2,000 years ago before mysteriously vanishing. "The Kintari have been extinct for millennia," Vera said, though her tone suggested she was taking Luna's research seriously. "Their empire is extinct," Luna corrected, "but their infrastructure might not be. Look at this pattern." She highlighted a 3-dimensional map showing the locations of pirate attacks over the past 5 years. When overlaid with the historical Kintari trade network, the correlation was undeniable. The raiders weren't choosing their targets randomly. They were following routes between ancient Kintari outposts and supply stations. Kira, now 17 and already serving as a junior diplomat in the coalition, studied the data with growing excitement. If the pirates are using old Kintari bases, they might be using Kintari technology too. That would explain how they always seem to stay ahead of our tracking efforts. Marcus felt pieces of a puzzle clicking together in his mind. The Kintari were known for their advanced surveillance networks and their use of psychic interrogation techniques. If someone has access to their technology, they could monitor empathic communications across multiple star systems, Vera finished, her expression grim. They would know exactly which ships carried valuable individuals and when they would be most vulnerable. The implications were staggering. If the pirates had access to a network of ancient Kintari surveillance stations, they essentially had eyes and ears throughout the galaxy. No wonder they had been able to evade capture for so long. But Luna's discovery also offered hope. If the pirates were dependent on Kintari technology, then understanding that technology might provide a way to stop them. Marcus immediately reached out to his contacts in the archaeological community, seeking access to any Kintari ruins that had been discovered but not fully explored. The response was better than he had hoped. Dr. Sarah Kim, a human archaeologist working in the Andromedan colonies, had recently discovered what appeared to be an intact Kintari command center on a dead world in the Outer Rim. She had been seeking funding for a full expedition when Marcus's message arrived. "The site is incredible," Dr. Kim explained during their quantum communication link. "The entire complex is still powered by some kind of exotic energy source. The data storage systems appear to be functional, and the quantum processors are operating at levels we can barely measure with our best equipment." Marcus felt his excitement growing. An intact Kintari command center could contain the keys to understanding not just the Empire's technology, but potentially the location of other installations in the network. "I need to see this site," Marcus said. "Can you arrange for a joint expedition?" "It won't be easy," Dr. Kim warned. "The world is in disputed territory, claimed by at least 3 different human factions, and there have been reports of pirate activity in that sector." Marcus exchanged glances with Vera, who had been listening to the conversation. They both understood the risks, but they also understood the potential rewards. "We'll provide escort ships," Vera said. "The Coalition has been looking for a way to take the initiative against the pirates. This could be our chance." 3 weeks later, Marcus found himself aboard a Lupari exploration vessel, traveling toward the dead world that might hold the answers they needed. The expedition team included archaeologists from 4 different species, technical specialists in ancient computing systems, and a full diplomatic staff prepared to negotiate with any human factions they might encounter. The children had wanted to come with him, but Marcus had insisted they remain safe on Ethros. This mission was too dangerous, and he wouldn't risk their lives for the sake of his research. But Kira had surprised him by pointing out that her diplomatic credentials were actually higher than his within the Coalition, and that her presence might be necessary if they encountered hostile forces. In the end, Kira and Zara had been allowed to join the expedition, while the other 4 children remained on Ethros under the protection of the clan elders. Marcus wasn't entirely comfortable with the arrangement, but he had to admit that both girls were adults by Lupari standards, and their skills would be valuable if the mission encountered complications. The dead world appeared on their screens as a brown sphere orbiting a dim red star. Once it might have supported life, but some ancient catastrophe had stripped away its atmosphere and left it as barren stone. The Kintari Command Center had been built into the side of a mountain, its entrance hidden beneath thousands of years of accumulated dust and debris. Dr. Kim met them at the site with barely contained enthusiasm. "The complex extends for kilometers into the mountain," she explained as she led them through the excavated entrance tunnels. "Most of it is still sealed, but what we've accessed so far suggests a command and control facility on a scale we've never seen before." As they descended into the ancient installation, Marcus felt a growing sense of awe. The Kintari had built their complex to last, with corridors carved from solid stone and lined with materials that still gleamed like new after 2 millennia. Bioluminescent panels provided soft lighting, and the air was surprisingly clean and breathable. The central command chamber was vast, with curved walls covered in displays that showed star maps, communication networks, and data streams that were still updating in real time. The technology was so advanced that it seemed like magic, responding to the presence of sentient beings and offering information in whatever language they appear to understand. "It's beautiful," Kira whispered, her empathic senses obviously picking up something from the ancient systems. "But there's something sad about it too, like it's been waiting for someone to come home." Zara was already interfacing with the technical systems, her natural affinity for complex machinery allowing her to understand the Kintari interfaces faster than the human specialists. "These networks are still active," she reported. "The surveillance stations are still transmitting data. Whoever is using this system has access to information about ship movements across dozens of star systems." Marcus studied the displays, beginning to understand the scope of what they had discovered. The Kintari hadn't just built a few isolated outposts. They had created a galaxy-spanning intelligence network that could monitor and coordinate activities across vast distances. In the hands of criminals, such a system would make them virtually unstoppable. But as the team worked to understand the technology, Marcus began to realize that something was wrong with their initial assumptions. The system was indeed active, but it wasn't being controlled from this location. Someone else had found a way to access the network from a different site, and they had been using it for years. "We're not the first ones here," he told the expedition leaders.